The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it's episode number 79, and it is 151 days till the man burns as of this recording. So this past week was the general sale, and it opened and closed in a matter of about 20 minutes. And my social media feed was immediately populated by a chorus of burners manifesting tickets. And I hope you were able to snag a pair, or not. If you're not planning on attending in 2018, I'm very much in the camp of it doesn't matter, as you may or may not know. Whether you're trying to get out there this year or next or never, my advice is always the same. Go get involved. Get involved in your local community, show up to things, help build, swing a hammer, or go on food runs. Nothing is guaranteed, and none of us are owed anything. But your chances of attending, if that's your desire, increase if you're present and active. I appreciate that the community tries to take care of its own. And it doesn't take much to be a part of the community, to be honest. You just kind of show up to things. If the worst case scenario is that you make some new friends and you sweat a little, I say that's a win. And if you live in a region that doesn't already have an active community, maybe you can start your own and get a weekly meetup going on. Maybe a happy hour or a quilting circle. I don't know what people do. It could just be like you and two other people. The journey of 1,000 miles. However way that sentence ends. Maybe your small town in southern Belgium becomes the staging ground for an art piece that rocks Burning Man 2020's socks right off. I'm doing a shrug. You can't see it because this is an audio platform, but just trust me, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, so last week I finally had the opportunity to sit down with David Bronner, the public-facing man in charge of Dr. Bronner's organic soap company, which I've come to learn is basically arguably a staging ground for the family's civic responsibility ventures and world-changing activities. Dr. Bronner's soap, of course, the stuff, the ones with all the writing all over it that every hippie has. And it is the most terribly kept secret of Burning Man that the Dr. Bronner family has a presence in Black Rock City every year under a different name. Just in the past couple of years, they've been known as Camp Abraxas, Transformation, instead of Transformation, get it? Every year, you got to track it down. You got to track down the magic foam experience, and you got to ask around and figure out where it is. And decommodification gets a little trickier when it's not simply a U-Haul van that you're covering up a logo on. And when I say family, I'm actually referring to the camp as well, not necessarily the Bronner executive family, but yeah, the family as well. The camp, which is powered by Dr. Bronner, it's still its own camp, but where it gets its juice. Whatever its name might be that year, is usually one of the first things that virgin burners learn about. Because our first year in the dust, many of us still had this silly ass idea in our heads that we need a shower. And so at some point during your first burn, you may be having the playa equivalent of that awkward, hey, how's the weather conversation with some other dusty individual. And someone will reveal that their primary purpose in life, for the past 3 days at least, has been to find a shower. And then someone else will say, oh yeah, there is a Dr. Bronner's human carcass wash on something and something. Hopefully you learn by the end of the week that those two are two extremely different experiences with very different purposes. But anywho, then you find yourself in a giant line of other dusty individuals, and eventually end up inside the dome, dancing naked to psychedelic funk and being sprayed with Dr. Bronner's foam while squeezed up next to a whole bunch of other naked folks. Let me tell you, man, at my first burn, I ended up at Bronner's around Wednesday-ish, I want to say. I really had no idea how close I'd gotten to murdering everyone around me until that magical shower experience. The foam dome may seriously be saving lives out there. Anyway, there's a ton of stuff about the camp that you can Google, and of course a ton about the history of the company and the ideals of the Bronner family. And don't get me started on Granddad. There's also a documentary called Dr. Bronner's Magic Soapbox. David was recently a guest on Mark Maron's podcast where he got into some of the story about his family and his granddad. And we'll do some of that in today's interview as well. But our chat is less focused on all that stuff that's already out there and like a little more, as always, on creating a portrait of David. I got linked up with David through Brad Berg of MAPS. That's the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, whom I was connected to via Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown, who was a guest on this show most recently on episode number 60, which was entitled The Rising Tide. David is on the board of MAPS, and the camp is home to Zendo. We'll be talking about that during the conversation. I arrived at Dr. Bronner's offices in Vista, California, and walked into, as you might imagine, an amazing smelling front lobby. And after a quick tour of the premises, we sat down in David's office and got into it. And a thing that I noted pretty quickly, that caught my attention was that David pays complete attention to everything you say. And he references back to things you said earlier. He is totally present. Not to say that that's not typical of most of the guests that I've interviewed. Don't get me wrong. I think it just maybe stood out to me because looking for links and connections is usually my job when I'm doing an interview. So it was a thing about his energy that just popped right out at me very quickly. And I imagine it's for that reason that I could have talked to David for another 2 hours. Easy. He says things like fucking dope, which is just so goddamn endearing. We start by talking about veganism and then bounce to discovering the meaning of life in a gay trance club in Amsterdam. And then we're off to the races. It's one of those episodes. And then soap is mentioned a little bit, I think. This one's kind of all over the place, and it's just fucking magic. I had such a great time recording it. I could be projecting because it's really how I see the world, but my big takeaway was that there is no barrier between work and play and passion for David. It's all the same reality. All one might say. The Dr. Bronner family history is over at drbronner.com, drbronner.com, and it is deeply fascinating. Highly recommended you check that all out. Today, though, let's jump right into talking about LSD and consciousness and civic responsibility. And that's David. And David in a nutshell. And after the interview, big, huge treat, big score, we'll be playing Mark Slee's deep and smooth opening Sunday night set from Robot Heart Burning Man 2017, which, fuck yeah, stay tuned for that. It is a fucking dope set, as David might say. Today's episode is entitled The Bronner Legacy. I almost called it The Bronner Identity, but I didn't. Anyway, I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
Things there were sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name because the rain
actually just got back from London a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Where I got to interview Arthur Mamomani, the designer behind the Sears Temple.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Have you seen the designs for it? Oh, it looks incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's he purposely, like, he'd kind of he'd had some designs already in mind, because at one point he was working on some stuff for Richard Branson for like a spaceport for his, like, the space program that he's got going on. So he ended up incorporating some of those ideas into the temple. So it's kind of a spaceport.
Okay. Yeah. Right on. Like the iRobot. Yeah. Nice. Right on.
It's really interesting.
Sounds dope.
Cool. Because you can like walk into it from any direction. So like instead of it feeling like it's like a traditional temple or church, you know, it's like you can walk into it from any direction, and it almost like it was a little eerie. Like it creeps me out a little bit, because I was having these kind of weird thoughts about where is this whole reality thing going, and then I end up looking at like the designs for the temple this year, and it looks very much like I don't know. I wish I could articulate it, but it does feel like a spaceport for consciousness.
Ooh, right on. Interdimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like. I know these are regular topics on your mind, and it's fascinating to me because you're running a company that's very much here on Earth.
Yeah.
And yet on some level you've had enough of these experiences where you're exploring.
Yeah, for sure, man. When does the transdimensional temple open its doors? Yeah. For sure.
Is it ever weird to like wake up to an alarm and come into work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess weird. I mean, yeah, everything is, I guess that's a state of mind. You know, it's, you know, I guess I'm really fortunate that what I get to do is kind of pretty amazing. And I mean, there's a lot of grind to it, of course, but I mean, it's all pretty much in service of pretty cool stuff. I mean, once in a while it's annoying, but mostly, well, it's annoying, especially if I'm hungover and tired. But if I'm not hungover and tired, usually it's like, you know, like the weirder the better.
Yeah.
I guess. But, you know, yeah, I mean, okay, for example, we just had our Equinox party all night, blast off at the Psychedelic Church. Like, it's our new warehouse space that we haven't had for like 10 years. We used to have a warehouse space down in Barrio Logan. Yeah. That we used to be able to throw parties and have community events and stuff. So there's a community center here, the station, that's been kind of doing that for a year, but then they were like on their last legs. It wasn't financially penciling out. And then we needed a space for a New Year's party to just go all night. And we came in and it was so beautiful, and it was in the heart, and Abraxas is parked there. And we just, you know, put up some of our murals and stuff. And I'm like, we should just, you know, what? I mean, we can come in and rescue this space and like put all our Burning Man art in it. Yeah. So then Equinox, I said, okay, well, let's get it all dialed for Equinox and go all night for Equinox, which was Monday night. And so that was amazing. It was so beautiful. And, you know, we got, you know, the top levels, this kind of Bedouin, Middle Eastern tea kind of space. And then we've got like our big Phoenix that we built this year, and a big Nataraja. And Abraxas the bus is in there, and just some huge sound system. It's super dialed and beautiful, and went all night. And then I had to have our financial meeting / executive meeting the next morning. And they're like, yeah, like, so at like 5:30, I'm like, whoa, you know, this L's still rolling pretty hard. I'm like, I can't be sitting in no 2-hour financial meeting, you know, but luckily just kept dancing. And, you know, by the time it was like 7:30, I'm like, okay, I can go in there and show up and just don't say anything stupid, you know, but yeah. So yeah, that was a little weird, you know, juxtaposing it all, but it's, you know, it's just part of it. It's interesting, you know, juxtaposing these realities. And yeah.
Well, it's because what you're able to do, and it's funny, like, because there's a descriptive that we hear a lot around the burner community, which is like when people are describing somebody and they'll say, oh, he's such a free spirit, you know, or she's such a free spirit. And like, usually is somebody knocking?
Yeah, who's that?
Feels like it's lunch or something.
Oh, well, I'm going to give you one of these.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, it's actually a really good lunch.
I
Cool.
brought you some food.
Oh, okay. Well, Bertina's or Raj?
Hi.
How are you? Hey, good to meet you. We have the most amazing food by our chef.
Oh, beautiful.
Made here vegan, organic meals, and it's so good. I wanted to share.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good taquitos. It's like off the chain.
That's
It's
rad.
amazing. You might be hungry again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
really
amazing.
ridiculous.
Thank
Would you
you.
like kombucha? We have kegs of kombucha provided to us too.
You know what? Sure.
Guava kombucha.
That sounds fantastic. Yes,
All right.
we'll have some. I'm not even going to edit that out. We're standing that right in there.
We just started going November 1st, all plant-based, free, organic plant-based lunches.
Look at that. Oh, yeah, that looks amazing.
Yeah, dude. And we have our chef opened up 2 of the Cafe Gratitudes. Mike P. He's so dope.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
and Felix and Bristy, they're just rocking it. Every day, I don't know what we're gonna have, but I know it's gonna be awesome.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
And, what we were doing too is giving like the high grass-fed beef and stuff to the taco trucks. Just hooking them up. Gratis. We're like, okay, here's the correct meat. To use. And then everyone would just get charged normal taco truck rates, but it'd be all like doped. The high level pasture raised chicken and beef. But then we do free organic plant-based, and just the whole thing, like we're trying to, I've been vegan 22 years, but I'm not like pushing vegan. We're just saying like, if the meat's not correct, if it's not coming from a really correct source and correct farm and an animal that's lived a life worth living, then you don't have to eat. You can rock your life with, plant-based meals and just wait for the correct meat to kind of be there.
Be the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's. I attempted to go vegan before my first burn, and then long story short, I realized it's going to take a little more work.
You know what we do for our camp? We actually do every other day plant-based and every other day like high-level meat, and we actually have a dude come from Colorado, Jake, who actually slaughters his own animal, raises and slaughters his own animals.
I had some of that.
Yeah.
I had it may have been a beef or lamb that I had. Gary Bailey actually is like, here, you got to try some of this. And it was like, he plays violins to them.
Yeah. That's it. That's Jake. Yeah. Right on.
No, it was absolutely the most delicious thing I've ever eaten in my entire life.
So that we're really trying to promote this ethic of much less, much better meat kind of thing.
It's it makes a difference. It's like, so much of the world thinks that it's just like a black and white thing. Like you either do this or you don't do it, and there's nothing in the middle. And it's not quite so simple. Like if the animals lived a better life, if it's died with less trauma, less stress, that affects the flavor. And then if it's lived a better life its entire life, it's going to affect that energy that you're putting into your own body. So
yeah, totally. I wrote a blog called Regenitarians Unite. And it's about whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or omnivore. Like it's all about just choosing to eat from farming in a regenerative, organic fashion that replicates a way a wild ecosystem operates, where you have a sustainable balance of plant and animal life, and you have no external inputs. It's all sustainable and regenerating, and that's the dietary choice. Like our plate is a farm, and our knife is a butchering knife, and our fork is a pitchfork. What does our farm look like? What kind of farm out there? We're all responsible for our piece of the garden, and what does it look like, and taking responsibility for it and making sure we're supporting the farms and farmers and the animals, that are living correctly, doing it correctly. And yeah.
There was just on my way up here, I happened to be listening to this news bit about Chris Pratt, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Are you familiar with the story I'm about to tell?
No.
He got a lot of heat on social media because he put up imagery of, I want to say it was a lamb that they had raised, and he describes in detail how they raised this lamb lovingly, and it was surrounded by affection and good energy, and then by the time that came to actually slaughter it, they approached it from a very humane angle. Like, I don't know exactly what the equipment was. And then every single piece of it was used, every single tiny part of it, the fur was being used, they, butchered correctly, et cetera, et cetera. And I can tell you, like, I mean, thank you. I can tell you, like, my personal goal is to eventually go vegan. It is hard when you're 6'5", 230 pounds.
Yeah.
But in the time being, a lot of it, and this is, my observation opinions, a lot of it does come down to the issue with it being the industrialization of it all, like the fact that it's turned into this factory and the horrible way that we treat animals, rather than saying no animal is ever to be killed or eaten ever. For, we're still here. We're still humanity. Things still consume things. And
yeah, that's the great mystery, like life feeds on life and death and rebirth. But yeah, and I think, I made a choice, like holding that knife, like I don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. But I also recognize, and I choose not to, but I also recognize in a vegan utopia where we've rewilded the world, and you have like wild, herds of ruminants and wolves and predators and lions and, restored, that, a lot of the, not, I don't know what it is, but probably like the majority of young calves are not going to make it to sexual maturity. They're going to, so, just understanding that, and then when they go down in the wild, it's, not, it's not a pretty, it's reasonably quick.
Right.
But the point is that like it is the most perfect life that animal could live in the wild, hopefully, and understanding that death does come early to a great many of the calves born, so that if we have a farming system where they're raised correctly and they're out on pasture, they get to live their lives and fulfill their instinctual behaviors and have a good life. And then that day of slaughter is quick and humane, then, I'm in solidarity against the machine. And I think that's the point of my blog, actually, is how the animal welfare and regenerative organic movements can come together to stop factory farming, like, which is just such a disaster on the planet, not just for the horror show for the animals, but just all this GMO intense, this petrochemical intensive feed. It's all synthetic fertilizer, nitrogen, and pesticides and herbicides. And we're just blasting on these commodity crops, bringing these really unhealthy crops to harvest just through more and more and more chemicals. And it's, it's just ripping the fertility out of our soils. It's just created just monoculture deserts basically over just huge tracts of the earth. But when you start to farm in a correct way, in regenerating the landscape and understanding your farm as an organism and not relying on a whole bunch of chemical inputs, but the natural fertility that exists within a healthy ecosystem, you can restore that life and balance. And this, as eaters, like our responsibility to feed the right, not feed the machine, but feed the alliance for regeneration of the world. But understanding that there is solidarity there should be solidarity between like the animal welfare vegan and the high animal welfare pasture-based farm. And that's what we're seeing more and more is like these just real high level alliances starting to form. And that's what we're trying to do within our Burning Man camp, is just like show that, that this is how we roll. It's about reducing level of meat, and then when you do eat it, that it's correct. And it's from Jake, and it's from farmers that are totally doing it right.
I think Jake is his name. Yeah, that's a perfect example, because I am of the thinking, and confirming for any of the listeners that are wondering, like I never put my foot down and say like this is the way things are, but this is what I've explored so far. I am of the thinking that if we are all more involved in that actual process, if at some point in our lives we've actually taken an animal's life, we actually have to go through the butchering process, we actually have to, see where the food comes from, rather than the detachment that we feel. If that was something that was part of a rite of passage, if you will, for a human being, I would imagine we would have never even gotten to this place with factory.
You're right, man. That's it, dude. Like, we have basically outsourced the responsibility of taking the animal's life that we eat to the machine, right? We're not doing it ourselves. And if we did, we'd have a lot more respect for that animal. You would just never, ever treat an animal the way we treat it within this factory farming system we have. And no one did. I mean, when you when you go to like developing world countries, I mean, the animals are getting to run around and they're not being force fed in little tiny cages and stuff. And I was actually just in a high level peyote ceremony down with the Huichol, the Warataka Indian tribe that's been holding unbroken peyote ceremony for 8,000 years. And Wirakuta is their sacred land. And I was there as part of, with the Native American Church and some philanthropists. And the Huichol ceremony was basically a prayer for world unification, but also for protection of their sacred peyote land, which we're kind of helping, in partnership with them, strategize different ways we can preserve, over the long term, cultural access and keep mining and ag interests from exploiting the land. But at the culmination, so it was an all-night ceremony. It was incredibly beautiful, and the peyote medicine and just they're holding the highest level prayer ceremony, with this medicine. And I'm on the board of MAPS, and our primary project is bringing psychedelics through FDA approval process and making them available as medicines, primarily MDMA and psilocybin as far as the immediate projects. But to visit like a culture that's been holding these, medicines in the highest level prayer centered kind of ceremony is just incredible. But with the dawn of the sun, they sacrifice a young bull, which is intense, but I made sure I was like right there present for it. And it's basically to honor the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. And in the Western mindset, we have this thing about, animal sacrifice, that's fucking crazy shit, But actually, this animal lived a life worth living, Its life was taken in a quick way, and every piece of it was eaten and consumed, and like that and used. And it's like this animal, there's so much more appropriately respected than the fucking shit we eat, every day in fast food and whatever. And we like judge like, oh, that's some crazy shit. This animal, it's like, dude, they have such a more immediate and reverential relationship. And actually that was like, I went right from that ceremony to Expo West, which is the largest natural products trade show in Anaheim every year. And we actually were launching with Patagonia and Demeter and Rodale and Compassion World Farming, this new regenerative organic standard, which basically takes organic as the baseline, but then adds like real high level pasture-based criteria for livestock, and then fair labor for workers, and like next level soil health practices. It's this really huge new standard that we're launching. And it was, just thinking like, wow, this bull, in part, it's like this standard, this effort we're putting into the world is like trying to restore the confidence between humanity and animals in the natural world in a sustainable way. And actually, when I got to LAX, Leah Garces, who's the chair of Compassion World Farming, like just randomly, synchronistically walked. I was at Advantage Car Rental, striking out, trying to get a car that my friend could drop in San Diego. And it just like struck out after like an hour long ridiculousness. She just walks right in and like, boom, get her car. And I was like, Leah, whoa, it's just in Mexico and they sacrificed the bull. And I was just thinking about you. And, it was this cool synchronous like thing, because she's great. And she's a vegan, she fully embodies it. She's vegan, but is the chair of Compassion World Farming, which is all about bringing high animal welfare practices to farms. And she's, best friends with like some high level, like the president of the American Grass-Fed Association, Will Harris. He's got this next level grass-fed operation in southern Georgia. Actually has his own on-site slaughter to minimize the stress of transport. Animal welfare approved, and that's the highest level animal welfare certification. But I mean, she embodies like this solidarity that's emerging between like the high level animal welfare leadership and the regenerative organic leadership. And that solidarity is like that movement, combining these movements, I think is what can really start to move the needle.
Because it's absolutely, that's fascinating. Because it is a process. Like not everybody has the bandwidth, the focus, the genetic makeup, the physical energy, the physical focus, all of these things to snap into it that quickly. And I discovered that because I was I was ready to go. I dropped everything. I love vegan food. I've never I've had lots of situations where I've eaten some sort of meat dish or animal-based dish and like been grossed out by it and I couldn't finish it. Whereas I've never had that happen once with a vegan dish. Now, like a little while ago, I made the effort to remove sugar from my diet, or at the very least treat it like a fun substance rather than an everyday eating thing. But then in the past month and a half, that paved the way to removing alcohol as well from my diet. So
yeah, congrats. That's a big one.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a step-by-step thing. Whereas like even like with like if you move towards removing dairy from your diet and then you move towards only consuming higher quality protein that's, more correctly raised like you're describing, that would pave the way for being able to step towards going vegan and much easier than dropping everything overnight and doing the full withdrawal, which for some of us can just be brutal.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there's different strategies. And I think the step-by-step is, in a way, like a more, easier way to do it. What we're doing here, it's all about kind of convenience and ease too,
Sure.
Like I think a lot of people will, community. It's just like if you have like the correct option kind of conveniently at hand, I think a lot more people go for it.
Absolutely.
It's just like, it's about access. So actually here, I'm going to have you take a bite of this because I will just say that there is,
keto?
like I wouldn't say there's gross vegan food, but there's really boring vegan food.
Absolutely.
But this,
I'll take a bite.
Yeah, take a bite. And this is what we're dealing with. This is so ridiculous.
Oh,
man.
no, it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is what we get like every day. We're getting this, just the highest level. Like what, and it's like, if you could have this kind of like level of vegan food, like, around, you're like, dude, I'll eat so much.
There's taquitos, there's guacamole. The tomatoes look so fresh.
Yeah.
I would eat this whole thing if I didn't have to.
We got like pretty much our whole workforce. This is mostly, Mexican American, like eat meat every meal, which is what I was doing like for most of my life. And they're just like, blown away. And everyone is, and it's just like, if you can just nail, if you just know what you're doing, cooking it right and just can make it, it's like curbside recycling, like who recycled before you had curb. I was like a pain in the ass. You had to like fucking, like whole half hour to
you're spot on. No, that's a lot of what I experienced when I attempted because I host another podcast. I'm an artist. I'm constantly in weird places running after projects. So I would find myself in like situations where we're, like somewhere in Riverside County that I've never been to. And I have exactly 40 minutes between show recordings, between sessions. And I'm like all the rest of my friends, like everybody else on the crew runs over to Jack in a Box or something or a taco shop. And I'm racing around trying to find something I can eat.
Yeah, dude. Right.
And it was brutal.
Yeah. Trail mix at the gas station.
Yeah. And then by the time I get there, my chemicals are all out of whack. I'm all emotional. I can't focus.
Yeah.
It's harder when you don't have community, when you're doing it alone.
So that's the thing. Like it's about reaching that critical mass, and that's when it, like the early adopters are obviously, they're kind of really doing the inconvenient thing. And 20 years ago, man, it was much harder, but now it's getting so much easier.
Yeah.
And, I think in another 5 to 10 years, we're just going to see a whole shift,
Absolutely.
Like basically we're going to get to a point, let's just say in 20 years, that if the animal wasn't raised correctly, it's just going to be fucking wrong to eat it. It's going to be like kind of smoking, like
you can taste it.
Yeah, it's just like not really acceptable. It's like, dude, what you didn't, come on, you gotta like, if you're gonna eat, flesh, it needs to come from a correct, like high welfare space. And if it's not, then dude, there's so many good, easy plant-based options. We're not quite there yet,
right?
It's still like, probably 10 to 20 years out, but you can kind of see it getting there.
Did you, for you, when you decided to go vegan, was it a moment? Do you remember what led up to that moment?
Yeah, it was, I was in Amsterdam after college. I had a Euro pass and happened to be there for the Cannabis Cup, the 8th Cannabis Cup in 95 in November, and got into the squat scene and just like, dude, I had these massive psychedelic experiences that just really, just opened me up, died in different ways into love and light and
in Amsterdam.
Exploded past like a lot of kind of false identities. And
can you tell me about maybe not one of them at least?
Okay, well, yeah, man. Well, the main initiation was I was in a gay trance club called the Motto on some LSD and MDMA.
Gay trance club, LSD, MDMA.
And
that's
just,
all.
Yeah, just
down
going
all that.
through like, just going through levels of like.
I'm sorry, I just want to tell you right now, you know how hard it is to find trance music? Like that is, I'm a trance guy.
Yeah.
It's so goddamn hard in California. It's all over there.
Yeah, it's funny. This is the glory days, man. This is like, oh man, what was the track that was like made people cry when it would drop? It was Cygnus X's remix of it. It was called something orange, the orange theme. It was this beautiful. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
dude. And it's kind of this play on Wendy Carlos, who herself is transgendered. She was early Moog kind of composition. She did the soundtrack for Clockwork Orange.
Nice.
So it's taking that kind of title track, which is really dark and like kind of crazy and beautiful, but really dark on a Moog. But then it takes it in a super ecstatic, like trance fucking direction, and it's so beautiful.
Oh man. Okay. All right. I'm completely with you, man. I never get to have a conversation about trance with burners. It's impossible.
Yeah, dude, totally. Okay. Right.
So you're at a gay trance club in Amsterdam.
Yeah. So, oh man. Well, this was, I guess I was still like pretty homophobic, but, I thought but it was like going through like, I don't know, like was going like got shifted into this extremely paranoid space.
How old were you?
I was like 22.
22. So you were still, I'm trying to sort of picture it. You're, for lack of a better description, I don't know, like a lot of times what we do is we end up trying to go the opposite direction of where our parents went. Mm-hmm. So you're describing yourself as homophobic at that age, but I'd always just assumed, coming from the background that you had with your grandpa and having this business.
I mean, I was not like any like kind of rabid thing. I'm just saying like on like kind of the deep fucking cultural programming levels, and anyways, just like exploding, just being challenged deeply, and but then realizing like what is my problem with myself, and like just going deep on like what does it mean to be gay or girly or straight or guy, and just like exploding through gender and sexuality, and just like getting to this place of like I'm not anything, I'm incarnate soul here to get down and fucking rock, like just really blowing through all this stuff and just realizing all this kind of, I don't know, socialized programming. Yeah. And like, in having, at one point, there was also like this like kind of rape fantasy of like that, like the whole, like I was like witnessing that, or I was going to be like raped myself. Like just, it was just like this really, and knowing that that's not happening on one level, but on another level, like going hard at God, like, okay, like, why, like, does rape and violence exist? And like just going hard at that, just like, and then, just going archetypally into it. And then like the experience, like what is the like least karmic consequence, the least sin for all involved in the situation, and it's like, just surrender. If you fight, then it's just like they're going to sin harder than, just going really, just fucking deep into that and basically dying, like just in that surrender.
Wow.
Just surrendered into the light, like the goddess just embraced me, like bam. And then I was just in, this heart blew open, heart chakra, just the light. And
how many hits was this?
It was, I was just primed, man. I was, so that was, so I came through that. Yeah. And then I'm like, hey God, like, what's up? Like, or like, I was like, good job making cool choices, but obviously that's, we're just getting down in the club, But I'm like, okay, God, well, we're getting down in the club, but right now there's rape going down all around, in the world. There's like violence, the worst fucking shit is going down right now, like, what's up? And then like being like microscope, like Job, like in the, like just whoosh, like the self, just the self of all, like just so huge and what it is, it's like there's no explanation. It's just fucking what it is, dude, and who am I to like, it's just it's just the mystery of it, and like it's just part of it. But then also seeing Jesus with his back to me over there, and just not trying to explain it, or he's not complaining, not trying to explain it, just like compassionately just stepping up and fucking helping out and getting down and being of service. And I'm like, oh, okay, I want to be that guy. Like, that's, the answer, like, boom, like, it's not, there's not an explanation. It's just what it is. And like, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And like, but then my then girlfriend, now wife and soon to be ex-wife, she's beautiful. But just had at that point also, we'd gone through a lot and was realizing how much I had like caged her, like her soul and her spirit, like just out of jealousy and like petty shit about her adventures in Asia. She'd taken a semester off and just had these huge, experiences and erotic adventures and, just done all kinds of amazing stuff. But realizing on some level I was like deeply jealous and had like kind of like fucking cut her down, and just seeing it so clear. And like, it's like, dude, like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Like, why, better you die than be in the way of her fucking, like, and like, and dying away and seeing myself like part of like this demonic horde as I'm falling away from it. But then she embraced me in a little, with her love, like pure forgiveness, self-forgiveness is immediate and complete, and just in like, again, in the light, into the love. And then the final stage was Helena. So Helena, like, I met this gay guy earlier and had a sweet connect, and she was cross-dressed in the club, like coming up all on me, and like, and I was like, well, I just got married to Chris forever, like I went through this whole thing, and then I was back in the whole kind of like with the spirit world, and it's like, dude, no, I'm like, you're here to get down. Why would you not be getting down, with anybody coming at you with love and celebration in their heart? And I'm like, yeah, boom, so light and love just explodes back open again. So that was like that was my huge initiation into the, into the spirit world and into love, and realizing that my granddad was, like his all one love philosophy that was on 24/7, which pretty much was selling over my head. And, I'd rejected Christianity. I'd come up, and when I was 13, I was like, if God so loved the world, why he sent his one and only son to this one spot? What about the Chinese?
Right.
What about the, but now all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, okay. Like,
that was what blew the doors open.
Yeah. This massive thing. And so at that point, I was like, okay, in the aftermath, I was like in full blown kind of spiritual emergency, like the Kundalini, I had these experiences that I was completely unprepared to deal with or had no context for. Yeah. But was just like working hard to figure shit out.
But you were still diving into it rather than, a lot of people's instinct would be to push away and run away from it. Yeah, no, this was obviously the hugest fucking thing ever. And it totally upended all of what I thought I knew about reality. So people are coming at me. And so your question about like dietary choice, like I was in a squat with some vegetarians and stuff, and like, they're like, yeah, so why are you eating meat? And I was like in a state, I'm like, why do I think what I think? Why do I do what I do? Everything was like just realizing how programmed I am. And this is my first time abroad really from the US too. And just I'm in a squat in the cannabis, realizing the religious dimension of the drug war. And there's these beautiful people facing 10 years to life if they step back foot in the fucking greatest country in the world. And, and just like really radically reevaluating like everything. It's like, fuck, man, this is brutal. Like such a brutal colonial fucking power in the world. And like our collective consumption choices, it's like the 6th great extinction event on the earth. Yeah. Like what's happening right now is like a comet has fucking hit the earth. The ecosystems are in collapse, the rainforests are burning, fucking, and just all this stuff, and just like, okay, I'm going to renounce my participation in this. Like, I do not want to be part of it. And like in seeing like I've got a knife in my hand when I choose what I want to eat, and like, I can shut down and kill that cow, but I don't have to. And like, so that was kind of like, and just kind of being in this very visionary state, like really immediate, like just kind of like, And so then when you actually stopped consuming meat, was it an overnight thing, or did you build up to it?
That it was overnight, not eating meat. I think I had one last hamburger somewhere, but I think at McDonald's of all fucking places. Wow. But then, but then then it was no more meat, and then eventually, and then within 3 months, cut out the cheese. As I kind of connected dairy and like what the fuck, and the veal, like the basically to have milk, you have to have veal. So cut out dairy and then eggs, so it was like a 6 month process. I guess. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. I imagine so that what were you were traveling at that time, and you hadn't come to start working with your family business yet at that time. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, at that point I was like, well, I can just grow plants, and I don't have to work in a family business.
Right.
I'm going to just grow plants and, work to change the cannabis laws and, integrate psychedelic medicines, which is obviously so necessary for individual and planetary transformation. So that was like what I dedicated myself to in Amsterdam, or to that cause, which continues to be my primary passion project. But I was there for 3 months, and it didn't work out. So then I, for one reason or another, came back to the Boston area. I went to school at Harvard and came back, and my then girlfriend was finishing up school. I became a mental health counselor kind of around McLean's, it's a famous mental health hospital. And there's this whole it was actually an amazing experience. Reagan had gutted the mental health industry so that people with no real relevant experience like me could basically staff like half the hours. But I actually had like the experience that counted, having really traversed, borderline psychotic states and understanding the territory. It was actually really good working with like paranoid schizophrenic populations primarily. Did you ever have a fear? Because this is a common fear when people, as like Alan Watts would say, play with psychedelics. Like the fear is that you might not come back. Yeah. I definitely bad trips are like some fucking, they're gnarly, and that's part of it. It's like that fear of like, it's not going to end. I haven't had anything too bad. Well, Jesus, what am I saying? I guess my attitude about it is different. It's like, it can be the fucking worst, right? Sure. But my attitude is like, well, it's just part of it. I accept it as part of the work and part of whatever, and, try not to get too lost and go down too many rabbit holes, and, like a little more familiar with the territory, but it can be fucking brutal, but for me, that's like just part of like the rinsing out and like kind of purging of the soul and like, coming through the other side and doing that work. And that's actually on Burning Man, we're the host camp for Zendo. Mm-hmm. And that's what Zendo is basically there to do is like, you're at Burning Man, you take LSD, you want to have a good time, but oh wait, you just had generational trauma come up, or personal, whatever the fuck. And all of a sudden you're navigating some really fucking heavy duty, emotional, hard stuff / flipped in a complete paranoid universe. So Zendo is all about like, creating a little safe space that's calm with trained sitters who can just hold space and, be there for you. And what we say is like, difficult is not bad, like that can be where you're doing the most valuable work. Absolutely. And just working through it and have a positive outcome. And, so I guess that's, so what Alan Watts is saying, like, it's kind of like big wave surfing or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fucking part of it is like, you're going to fall and get fucking churned up, but you're also going to ride and you're going to, Yeah, they're not bad trips. They're challenging. Yeah, that's right. But I think like the fear that some people have is that even after the substance is no longer active in your human body, they just never come back. Like it triggers some psychotic thing and that just never stops. Well, and I think that it's I think generally that's not going to be the case for most people. But if you have underlying schizophrenic predilection. Sure. Like trigger. If you're genetically predisposed, then, that's not automatically mean you're going to become schizophrenic. But if that intersects with an environmental stimulus that's heavy and can trigger a psychotic break. Right. So, you need to be cautious and understand what is your history, like if you have a history of schizophrenia in your family, I would say definitely be cautious with these substances. They are real powerful. But even, I guess Artie Lang would say like psychosis, like our consensual reality is psychotic. you know, and like, it's like, you know, a psychotic break can often sometimes be liberating in its way, but I don't want to, it's also can be, and usually is incredibly debilitating, and I don't want to, and that's the thing about psychedelics is like, we want to be clear about that these are real powerful. And if you optimize your set and setting, generally you're going to have a positive outcome. It's like guaranteed,
right?
You know, if you really control it. And that's part of what we're doing at MAPS is like, you're taking these in a therapeutic setting with a trained sitter, like that paranoid reaction, because you're with somebody who's kind of got like the random noises and all that fucking shit that you can just start to spin out with. But when you have someone you trust kind of holding space, then you're like, oh, well, you know, you got that. I don't have to worry about it, you know? So, you know, and just really being able to focus on that. And there's
usually some sort of explanation. I mean, just we were talking about Amsterdam. So, I mean, Amsterdam was the first time I ever ate mushrooms, experienced psilocybin. And there was a group of us, and we had absolutely the most stereotypical post-college Euro trip you could imagine. Like, I mean, it was just bouncing our way through Europe drinking. And so we ate these mushrooms in Amsterdam, and everybody started to have these similar experiences where the paranoia started to set in. And like, we're walking through the streets and it looks like people are minding their own business, talking to each other. And then all of a sudden we look at them and it looks like they're just looking at you with evil eyes. Right. And then like, you look at them again and it looks like they're not doing that anymore. So people start to, in my group, start to describe that they're having this feeling, and the fear starts to come up. And I think to myself, like, okay, there's got to be a reasonable explanation for why this is happening. And I start kind of like digging through my thoughts of like what this could be. And I remembered some random, it might have been something on like Nat Geo or like Discovery Channel or something that I watched. Like, I don't know, some basic thing about how mammals, they'd done studies, and what they found is that mammals recognize each other's faces by making eye contact. So like, for example, when they would blindfold multiple people and then ask people who weren't blindfolded to remember their faces, they had a harder time remembering the faces of people whose eyes they couldn't see, even if they could see all the rest of the features. Right. So a thought that I had was, and I don't know if I just pulled this right out of my ass, by the way, I described this to the rest of the group. I told them, listen, what's probably happening is that we are having this experience 1,000 times a day where we're making eye contact with people just for a split second, and we're not thinking about it or noticing it. But due to the psilocybin, the brain is having you focus on that split second, and it's remaining in the front of your memory, and that's what's making you think that everybody's staring at you. And also, you can't understand the language they're speaking, so you think they're talking about you. So I sort of explained this to everybody, and then like everybody calmed down, like, "Oh yeah, that totally makes sense."
Dude, that's awesome, man.
And then it went away.
Yeah, that's great, dude. Wow.
I don't know. I haven't looked it up again since then to know if that's actually factual. But
it calmed down. Like you gave an explanation that's plausible to, like, because I mean, it's obviously they obviously weren't plotting anything. You know, I mean, they're like just doing their thing. I mean, the only thing is like, you know, like, what are those weird freakers doing? But even then, like, we look so much more normal together than, you know, we think like, oh, everyone's staring at us, we're like fucking weird, whatever. And it's like, usually we know, you know. Well,
overwhelmingly, a bad trip, quote unquote, I'm doing the quoties here because I don't use that phrase. Overwhelmingly, it's I've walked multiple people through challenging trips, and when you strip away the explanations that they're giving about what's upsetting them, every single time, the consistent factor has been a fear of judgment.
Yeah.
It's never been a different reason. Every one of them has a different thing that they're describing. But underneath it, when you strip away the layers and the reasoning and everything, it comes down to a fear of judgment, a fear of people looking at them and judging them. And really, it's your own judgment.
Yeah.
You're just projecting that onto other people.
Yeah.
Other people are minding their own fucking business.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all worried about being judged by you.
Dude, that's interesting, man. Wow. And like, because I just did Ibogaine in October, and I had a full Judgment Day experience. I mean, that's kind of like part of the literature. And I think it's common with high dose psychedelic experiences. Like, you have that kind of life review of But in the ibogaine, it was just like, I mean, it felt like it was just such a complete download. I just felt like, otherworldly, spirit world was like, okay, karmic red, okay, here comes the download, and like just going through my life, like both, like all the, just getting 360 all party view on how things went. And this is like real judgment, not like bullshit, not like, I'm lacerating myself over it. It's just like, oh, that's exactly how that went, like I thought it was like that, but I was oblivious. It actually went like that, and as like each episode kind of like, but then I was also like checking in with my friends and family and their smiles and their laughter and what's so dope about them. And I had a huge experience with my dad and stuff, but just, I remember like in that, and also within the judgment, also feeling like just these experiences, like separating in a way, like all these moments, and feeling like this kind of like heaven and hell. I was in kind of like a mystical Christian trip. It just felt like all these experiences, like kind of like the heavy, lame ones, like moving downward, but then these beautiful, like all the laughter and the loving and those beautiful moments, kind of rising upward, and and just this experience is real, and just realizing that this is the experience that led to these cosmologies. Right. Whether, what, ontological reality they have, that's obviously whatever, I don't know. Yeah. But, and I'm not saying, I don't believe in like a literal heaven and hell, but like, it's interesting, the quality of the experiences, like when they are like, beautiful and heavenly and whatever, and what their quality is versus like lame, not cool shit, Yeah. And like, yeah. Anyways,
I had an experience actually recently, when I cried, where I can't quite, it's one of those situations where you can't quite describe how the download came. You just all of a sudden had this knowing, and it was this like knowing. It almost felt like God was speaking and saying, I am speaking to you through even the dark places. It's just that you guys only want to listen when I'm coming at you with the love and light and happiness and the cloud singing. But even the darkest places in the world, it's all still part of the same reality.
Dude, that's the mystery, man. And that, like, in the ibogaine, like the big fucking spirit, like when it's like, okay, fucking Davidson, pay attention. Yeah. And it was my dad. It was in my childhood home, and his Time Life, he was a World War II buff, and it was his Time Life World War II collection, like on our bookshelf. And then this like kind of picture of him like in his like kind of ecstatic like coach role, like he always coached me in soccer and stuff. It's like Char's life, he's like laughing, and there's this and juxtaposed with the Time Life World War II, and just like just the juxtaposition of like this fucking horrendous tragedy, this whole generational fucking catastrophe that like my parents were killed in the Holocaust, and the ovens of the Holocaust behind, but through, everyone through the world. The fucking world, the scale of the catastrophe was just so enormous. And juxtaposes my dad, like the Phoenix, he just forged this beautiful life for us and this life force. And here we are, kind of like the Phoenix off of the charnel grounds of life, like here it is. It's both the fucking catastrophe and the beauty, and like, just kind of charging forward. Like the Phoenix, just like being reborn, and somehow it's all part of it. And
Full Catastrophe Living. Are you familiar with that book?
No.
Yeah, it's by John Kabat-Zinn. It's it was like sort of credited with to some extent bringing Eastern meditative practices to Western medicine.
Okay.
But that's the phrase, full catastrophe living. You live the full catastrophe. You don't just pick like the nice little pretty parts.
Right on.
Thing.
Yeah. No, that's yeah.
I want to go back to something we were starting to hit on in the beginning, where I was describing free spirit.
Yeah.
Like in this community, like that's a common thing that you hear, the phrase free spirit, which I've sort of, I feel like in a lot of ways is a stand-in for, I don't know, unreliable. Mm-hmm. There's this like sense of like we've all met a lot of these wonderful hippies that are very checked out of mainstream society, if you will.
Okay.
And you are a person who is navigating that consciousness very comfortably. And a lot of this conversation, if I was to just play this without context and not say this is David Bronner, actual owner of a company, a manager, a professional, somebody would listen to it and just could very easily just be like, okay, it's just, some crazy hippie.
Yeah.
But you do that, but then you're also involved in and running a professional operation at this level. And there's generally a sense that exists that I think I even share, because that's something that I'm navigating as I'm building my own professional background. How deep can I go into this exploration of consciousness and still be able to make management decisions and show up to meetings with the lawyers and sign contracts?
Yeah.
I have those experiences. I have those thoughts of oh man, I really just want to trust people and I want to know that everything's going to get taken care of because we are one and I love you. But then,
no, you got to take care of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you consolidate those?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately that, when you can have a correct balance, I think both feeds each other. Definitely, I think the insights within, these kind of psychedelically or, cannabis is like my daily check-in, I would say I don't smoke that much, but I smoke every day, just, a little bit, and just getting that shift of consciousness. And it actually is really helpful. Just thinking about my day and the whatevers and, professional and personal, and just, kind of giving a different consciousness and way of kind of more relaxing, letting things occur, kind of creative solutions arise, and, more insights into more angles and insights than, in your kind of go consciousness, you'd kind of in a way, we're unbalanced in our culture with go consciousness. It's on task, you're task oriented, and, and that's important, but and that's, kind of what is necessary to manifest and get shit done and whatever. But, is unbalanced against this more relaxed, open, receiving consciousness that, and I think if you balance them, that can actually really help your overall performance in either domain. We've got the checked out hippie stereotype on the one hand, and then the corporate kind of suit, slave to the machine on the other, but if you can kind of meet in the middle, and someone who's a big, example of that for me, well, actually in Amsterdam, I had when I was okay, I gotta go to the monastery, I gotta fucking devote myself to the spirit world and all this. And I remember I was talking to a bunch of people, and there was this one cat who turned out to be kind of the highest level, most direct, mentor. But at the time I was like, dude, what are you talking about? You know what you're talking about. But he, in hindsight told me the truth, But among other things is he's well, you can do the monastery trip. He's a pretty developed dude, just kind of clear by his thing. But he was just kind of in a, button shirt and shit, but getting a lot of respect from various people. I don't know what exact level or what organization, maybe Fourth Way, Ouspensky, Gurdjieff style kind of deal. Anyway, his thing was look, you can go to the monastery, but people have a real hard time reintegrating. Not that you don't have your, John Kabat-Zinn's and people who can negotiate and work in the world and choose a monastic path. But a lot of times it's really fucking difficult. And he says what we need in the world are adults, people who can navigate and fucking engage on the machine, engage on the system, engage on policy and the political process, and just fucking move it, and it's not sexy and it's boring and it's fucking, it's a lot of things, but it's also just kind of what the world is, and being able to, and so Rick Doblin was who I was going to talk about, the founder of MAPS. Here's a guy who's has been to the most outermost reaches of psychedelic experience, and just so beautiful. But his Obi-Wan Kenobi, working the machine, he went back to Harvard Kennedy School, got his PhD in public policy, and his thesis was bringing psychedelic medicine through FDA approval process. You know, it's like, what? You know, this is like in the, you know, late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. And that's exactly what, you know, that's what we're doing. I mean, we're basically, you know, he fucking mapped it out back then, and he's been working the machine and working the system in a way that, you know, who could envision like this succeeding, but somehow he's done it, and he's just in there. He shows up, you know, puts on the suit and just understands the domain and system. He understands scientific rigor and process. And even though a lot of ways it is gamed, like just keep showing up, you just keep fighting, you know, okay, you get fucking blocked here. Okay, go here. Right. And then you just start to shut down the Death Star and move into the center. And now we're like, you know, we just raised all the firepower we need for FDA approval process for MDMA and for psilocybin. Right. So anyways, yeah, so that is, I think, crucial to be able to, you know, not check out of the political process and societal dilemmas like that. We need to engage on that, but we can't get, you know, like too trapped in struggle all the time. It's like, I forgot who said it, but it's not my revolution if I can't dance to it. Yeah. You know, but like being able to have fun and like, you know, not in every circumstance, but, you know, like we need to kind of have a balance, I think. Right.
Yeah. It's, and I think that that's where a lot of us struggle with that balance, because the spiritual experiences, the psychedelic experiences, they, you know, just gut check your ego. And the ego is sort of the thing that, for most people, at least, who haven't figured out what that balance is, for most people, the ego is the thing that makes you wake up in the morning and show up to work and then go get that paycheck. And when you get more and more of these experiences, I imagine more and more people are like, why does it even matter? Why do I even need to? I mean, why don't I just go live in the forest? Why do I need to show up to work?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what your work is. And I think that's a path, you know, I mean, the renunciate path, I think, I mean, it's hard, but it's totally a deep, valid one if it's followed with integrity and if your job totally sucks, you know. But I think, you know, I think oftentimes that there is a flow, you know, like, I mean, I think that's it. Like the gut check to the ego is like, you just realize, yeah, well, the egos, we're just, you know, tiny little whatevers in a much bigger reality process. And just like that there is some kind of flow that you can tap into. Like I kind of think about it like that force, that pattern, like took us from a single cell in the womb and made us into this fucking trillion cell complex, ridiculous creature, you know, the generations of, you know, going back to the Big Bang, you know, this process that's been evolving and doing all that. Like there's some kind of like daemon for each of us, some kind of guardian angel almost that's, you know, like just part of that, you know, pattern, you know, you don't stop growing in the womb. I mean, obviously or as an, you know, adolescent, like as an adult, like there's still growth and there's still like some kind of force out there if you can tap into it or just read the signs. It's kind of synergized, you know, it's not like there's not predestiny. It's not like that, but just, I don't know, just trying to feel it and feel your way. And that might be going into the forest and quitting your job. You know, that might be the move. But, you know, oftentimes it's quitting your job and getting another more meaningful job, you know, or whatever. And who knows? I don't know. But yeah.
How has your relationship been with money growing up? Did you have a positive or negative association with it? How do you feel about the money system?
Yeah, I pretty much grew up middle class. I mean, my dad, my granddad basically ran Bronner's as a nonprofit religious organization and dedicated all the profits to the, you know, Uniting Spaceship Earth. Which, you know, he's coming out of the Holocaust. He saw a nuclear armed world, but the next Holocaust, if we don't realize our transcendent unity across the religious ethnic divides, that we're all children of the same divine source, we're going to all perish. So he was, you know, 100% on that mission, and all the profits were dedicated to it. And he basically abandoned my dad and uncle to go save the world. And my dad's mom died when he was like 4. So my dad came up in a lot of foster homes. Wow. And then joined the Navy and oversaw the soap production. But actually, I grew up in LA. My granddad was down here in San Diego. And my dad rose to become the chief operating officer at a chemical specialty firm in Atwater in LA, which was much more gangbangy and gnarly back then. Now it's all gentrified and cool. But anyways, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and my dad was awesome, and really he wanted nothing to do with religion or cosmic vision. It was just all about showing up and being there for your family and for your community, and that was like the values that was really instilled. But
the pendulum always swings one way or another, with kids and parents.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Right. And so I feel like I'm like balancing both. I'm both my granddad's cosmic vision and my dad's like real practical, show up, fucking put on the pants, show up and leverage what you can fucking leverage, and like, but as far as money, it's just energy. And early on I could see where Bronner's was going, and, we crossed 110 million last year in revenues, and we gave away 8 million. But just to honor what my granddad's all about is that we put in a 5-to-1 cap. So I don't make none of the family executives make more than 5 times the lowest paid warehouse position. Wow. And all the profits we don't need for the business go to the different causes. And so like none of us are like rolling in. The relationship is that within that 5-to-1, and that's fucking plenty, it's just plenty. Sure, okay, don't try not to do harm or whatever, but, have a good time, whatever. But, anything in excess of that, that's kind of ridiculous, and that should just go to making the world better. And I think if everyone, and 5-to-1, that's just a number, but cap it, if wealthy individuals would just say, hey, I don't need a fucking yacht and a fucking spaceship and whatever, I can, dedicate. And, I'm not saying that, if it's a spaceship temple on the playa that's going to fucking blast people's souls and hearts and minds open, that's cool. But, and actually spaceships are cool. So, but if it's just like stupid yachts or whatever, there's just so much of wealth and societal wealth is diverted into like stupid toys for rich people, and we should be like dedicating that to manifesting a better world for all of us and throwing kick-ass parties on in the playa. And, and that's attention, right? Obviously there's a lot of energy and time consumed in the burn. And I think a lot of people go through some kind of conflicted process of like, well, we're putting a lot of resources into this party, but, it's a conscious party and it's transformative on culture. And I think it's I don't know. Do you remember Crude Awakening? Do you remember the art project?
No, which one's that?
It was an oil derrick. I think it was 2008, maybe.
I hadn't.
Or 2006. Yeah, man. This was amazing. So it was this 100-foot tall oil derrick, and it had like these 20-foot tall figures from different cultures and religious tradition, like in supplication in front of it, and just on fire, just burning, and just this. And and I was like, what? I didn't quite get the meaning. It was fucking dope. And then on Saturday or Friday night, they blew it up. It was like the largest fireball on the fucking playa ever. It was so ridiculous with all these fireworks and stuff. And it was called Crude Awakening. And then like in that moment, I was like, oh shit, like our awakening on this planet is, it's powered by crude, like fossil fuel. But somehow we're awakening through this fucking expenditure. We're fucking drilling down and, all the finite resources. But at the same time, we're fucking getting better. We're like women's rights, gay rights, civil rights, fucking environmental, we're awakening, it's just this race of like, our awakening as we burn like the booster rockets of crude that we got, and our, it's a fucking crude awakening, with war and fucking all kinds of hard, horrible shit. But hopefully we are going to awaken and, ultimately move to solar and peace and love and happiness forever. I don't, but that we are in the midst of this fucking crude awakening powered by crude. And it was like this dope, it was a really beautiful art piece. And then they brought in a big tree that I guess they weren't able to actually plant or something, but to symbolize, whatever, like a restoration of correct relationship to the natural world. And that the prodigal son, restores its relationship with nature. but anyways, yeah, I feel like, you know, that the burn is like, yeah, it's an appropriate expenditure. I mean, there's a lot of stupid shit, and I've skipped burns. I've like hated on the burn, you know, like, fuck the burn, you know, I just fucking hate that place, you know.
Yeah.
But then it's like, when you do, you're like in San Diego, and it's like, you know, what the fuck is it in San Diego that's so much better than BRC? Like, what, you know, I'm gonna go snorkel and I'm gonna go to Anza Borrego, and you know, it's like, come on, dude, if you're at BRC and you don't like what's going on, just fucking go somewhere else. It's a big city, you know. There's some cool shit, like the per capita awesomeness, you know, average is like, you know, off the Richter. It's obviously way better. Anyways, but you know, you have to go through your hating phases.
Yeah. But that's actually, that was going to be my next question is, the burner culture, the burner community. This is something that I've referenced quite a few times on this show. It's an umbrella of a lot of different cultures and communities and movements that were already happening before Burning Man happened. It's just that Burning Man ended up kind of being like our comic convention. You know, like the filmmakers and the people who collect comic books and the people who are into Star Trek, like we come to the same comic convention.
Yeah.
And that's what Burning Man basically is. It is the convention where all these different communities that have been existing for a while, these different beliefs and movements, we come and we overlap at that place. So it's sort of like a chicken or the egg thing. And like somebody who's discovered Burning Man for the first time and might not have as much familiarity with some of these movements, a lot of times they think that Burning Man sort of created them, and they're not. Burning Man's just sort of where we came together. And I'm wondering, so like your family, your granddad, this business is a perfect example of that. This was around, you know, before Burning Man, before anybody from your family attended Burning Man. I'm wondering what that was like for you going to Burning Man, and then how, if any, there was a way that experiences at Burning Man and running a camp and all that kind of stuff affected the way that you run business back home.
Yeah. I guess, you know, my kind of stereotypical like breakdown, you know, like a first approximation of the burn was like, it's 1/3 hippie, 1/3 Silicon Valley, and 1/3 radical fairy, but like all the freaky kind of edges of all those. And then every single subculture ever, you know, at further like levels. I would say like just the, you know, sheer creativity of like, you go out there and it's like, you know, you're like, you know, just the self-expression and art and everything. It's just, you know, like, okay, whoa, like, what can I do? You know, like, what can I bring? And just that actually was 2008 was when I first brought, or 2009, I was going through a tough time. And my dad had died when I was 25, and I had to step up pretty young to run Bronners. And it was like 10 years later. And just, you know, having, you know, our daughter, family, and business. And I was like, Pop, man, you know, just going through a tough time. I was like, you know, how'd you do it? You know, it was like, you know, hard and built like and just remembering all the joy of foam that we did, because we'd had to shut down the foam side of the business and just concentrate on the soap business. And I built like based on one of his late designs, like a foam generator. A compressor foam systems. Actually, he had designed it for a German hotel in Sri Lanka. But I built one and brought it to the burn, and we were at Camp Winterland. This is back when like 2:00 was a fucking desert. Like there was nobody out there.
Yeah.
And that was like, so we were way out there, and
it wasn't where Diplo was spinning yet.
No, yeah, totally. And yeah, it was. But that was the first foam, and like we had this totally inadequate gray water system. But we were clearing out blocks of people. We were like, "What are you doing?" You know, and just like we're just blasting foam on people, and you know, this is what we grew up with, and it was just so fun. And
before people started yelling at you about consent.
Yeah, well, dude, you know that. Well, we're pretty good. We've always been pretty good about that. Yeah. Yeah, nudity, not ludity. That's our thing. But yeah, I mean, we totally overflowed this totally inadequate gray water system and like made it like an acre of neon turquoise, you know, gray water, you know, the first prime directive, like totally violated. But it was like, well, the amount of joy and love we're like creating right now, blasting foam, is like, you know, we're do this 1 year and then we got to figure it out. And then the next year we built a big bathtub where people could blast foam on each other and make it more interactive. And that was Foam Arigato. And yeah, and just kept stepping it up. But then, you know, because I'd also met Rick Doblin at Burning Man in 2005. So I was like, that was my first year. And I was like, whoa, Maps is on Playa. Yeah. And like we were suing the DEA over hemp, and they were suing the DEA over breaking their monopoly on marijuana, medical marijuana. But it was just a real cool meeting. And, you know, I was like, Rick, you know, I'm all about this project you're on, you know, integrating psychedelics into global culture, and I'm going to help you do it, you know, someday. And, you know, fast forward in 2013, we became the support camp for Zendo. And, you know, just kind of really merged. And that was the same year that I became, was it 2013? I think I joined the board of Maps. But, yeah, I would just say you know, just the culture. Oh man, it's like going to Mecca every year. You know, it's like your graduation. It's like, okay, you got to fucking go climb that mountain. Mount Burning Man. And like, it's not easy. You just got to like fucking do it. I mean, it's incredible. So many beautiful experiences. It's so hard too. But it's just incredible. And like, it's the amount of synchronicities that go down and just whatever. And it's hard to like describe how it changes you, I guess. But I don't know, you just get more humble and open to the mysteries and beauty, and I don't know.
I've always liked the Mecca reference because it is like I feel I'm one of those people who feels very strongly that it's important to engage the community in whatever way is within your grasp and abilities. And I really like the Mecca example. It's the thing I've heard is like, all right, it's the pilgrimage you try to make once if you're able to. Yeah. But if anything, if the only thing you can do is attend like the regional that's closest to you, or just connect with the community in your own hometown, wherever you are in the world, if you're not able to make it out here, like that's okay too. But if you can make it out once, that's your one pilgrimage. And that's the only thing that God technically asks is try to make it once if you can.
Yeah, totally, man. And the reality is that like we're, you know, our mission out there is Zendo support camp, you know, and if we weren't doing that, you know, I mean, I like to think I would still be going because it's super important. I'm going to go every burn pretty much for the rest of my life. I mean, I already took the 2 off and learned, you know, that there's nothing better to be doing.
What were you hating on at that time?
Oh man, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like just you know, bumming on, like, you know, the shadow side. I mean, everything's the shadow side of the burn, like just the resource expenditure, the kind of party, you know, just the kind of rich kids partying in the desert with no deeper significance, like that kind of shadow side of it, you know, right? And not engaging on like the, you know, pressing global problems we have, but, you know, just kind of in a self-indulgent way, just having whatever experience out there. And there's, I mean, it's important to engage on that shadow because it's, you know, a part of it, but it's only a part, you know, right, just understanding and just like, okay, like understanding that shadow in all of us and in the collective, but then it's also really beautiful and incredible experiences and amazing stuff. And, you know, just holding that in balance and saying like, you know, that shadow exists in every city in our regular lives. Like what are we doing that's like so fucking great for the planet in our normal lives, you know, when you like use that critique, you know, whatever. Right. And it's just like, you know, like, look, generally on balance, you're doing a lot more out there than, well, or you should be, you know, I mean, a lot of it's on myself. It's like, okay, I was just getting too strung out. I was doing too many drugs, just too many, whatever, you know, and depleting myself and whatever. And like, just pace it, like drug, you know, just be more in proportion, go big, like a couple times, but keep it, you know, slow the roll and, you know, just be more conscious and be more creative and participatory maybe ultimately. And that's part of it too, is like your shift from being like a receiver to a giver, you know, not that you're not always like giving. And I always felt like psychedelics, like breaking open the head and pouring that into the playa and into the collective is like a big part of it. Anyone's contribution, and not that you need psychedelics to do that, but you in my case, and many, I think, helps open us, pour our energies out into the collective. But
well, the thing that you're describing about the giving and correct me if I'm, because this is what I'm feeling on this. This is what I'm experiencing as I'm getting older, and I'm kind of developing more different leadership positions in my own journey. I am finding that the fun that I'm having from, for lack of a better description, creating the party and creating the safe space and being that rock for younger people, or even for people that are just beginning to explore certain things, that fun is now actually, it's surpassing the fun that I used to have being in the party. Yeah. Like being in a position to create that environment for people and to give in that manner. Like I didn't think it was possible. I always thought I just wanted to be on the dance floor in the club and have somebody else worried about it. And now I'm starting to get that feeling more and more of like, man, it's actually a lot more fun to put this together and allow a dance floor to exist for others.
Yeah, totally. Like that's it. Like, and I do feel like my journey similarly, like stepping into like the psychedelic elder role, like, that and more facilitating experiences for others. And not that I'm not going to continue to have mine, and there's still an ethical prerogative to do that, but more like constructing, like being a producer, like being one of like the, this, I don't know, spiritual production that we're all on.
Sure.
And
and that's, I'm wondering, how are there any ways in which you have experienced as your role as a leader, as the burden becomes, for lack of a better description, heavier as a leader, as you rise in notoriety, as more people around the world know you, as you guys expand in employees and you make more money, are you finding any of those pressures in affecting the way that you're able to live and how free you can be? Are there any fears of like being a target by more powerful people in government, in positions of power, people that want to, they might not like the fact that you're able to do this and party with your, with your tribe and be out there. Like, this is scary to a lot of people.
Yeah. I would say that, I've been pretty conscious about coming out on progressive levels of my kind of psychedelic self and freaker self, and in a way, like my best defense is offense, like being real, just out there and going for it, and speaking frankly, in like a podcast like this about like pretty personal and intimate stuff, and just like, I used to stress about like the helicopters going by and like, oh, they're, coming for me, kind of stuff. But I don't know, like I'm just feeling more integrated in my family, my company, my professional life, just like bringing, I think like taking the lesson from the OBGT movement and success of like, come out wherever you are, and like, let that freak flag fly. And I think we're on the cusp of a new roaring 20s. The whole stigma against psychedelic experience is going to be evaporating here with FDA approval, and like holding space and being there to, show how to do it responsibly, do it right, have fun, get out there, but, like kind of showing the way,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They do, first of all, let me stress, I agree with you fully. I'm asking these questions because they're fascinating to me. I've definitely, I've spoken about this before a few times too, like I'm Persian, my family's from Iran, coming from a culture that is very big on brushing things under the rug. I, as an artist, decided like very early on to dive into being as public as possible, because I found that the more public you are, the less they can hold over your head.
Yeah, that's okay. That's exactly it, man.
It's secrets. Like that's how they can control you.
Yeah.
That they, I'm saying they, but at the same time, there are certain things where if the mysterious they, like if the government, wanted to, let's say you had competitors who are not happy with how quickly you're progressing as a business, and they start looking for ways to poke holes and come after you legally, I don't know, and they can start digging away at things.
Yeah, you got to be smart and strategic. I mean, I think I've been pretty public about, the psychedelic advocacy and in my kind of beneficial experiences. But yeah, I mean, like one of my psychedelic therapists says, he's like, you got to operate carefully. Like, you don't need to be a martyr.
Right.
Yeah. You get into the collective radar. Yeah. It can be, you got to be careful about how you navigate it and not get, nailed to a cross kind of thing.
And that's really the reason why, I think that we're going to see it soon, like a psychedelic coming out the way that we saw coming out in the LGBTQ community and the way that we saw in cannabis.
Yeah, you're going to see it in a huge way. And actually, there's a real moment coming very soon, and it's going to be Michael Pollan. The author. He's like Omnivore's Dilemma. He's an amazing food writer and just high level dude. So he's writing a book on psychedelics, and it's called How to Change Your Mind, and it's dropping in May. And that's going to be a huge moment, cultural moment, when that drops. Because he's like, he's a bridge between like a lot of, like my family, like my mom, my brother-in-law, like, pretty conservative people, like, hugely respect Michael Pollan, and that's going to be a real moment in this, where we're headed, which is like, people are going to just, we're headed to a space where it's like, wait, you're 21 and you haven't, you're not experienced, like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. What are you working on next that you're really excited about in terms of where the company is going and also the camp at Burning Man?
Right on. And this is going to be a good segue because I got a 2:30 call that I'm a little late with Flowcanna. And Flowcanna is this dope cannabis company that's working with all the sun-grown, outdoor organic family farmers that are facing crisis, like complete fucking catastrophe with legalization, where you've got all these indoor grows that are, just undercutting, and you have a collapsing price of flour, an uninformed consumer, like, you have these chemical saturated indoor grows that are just totally unconscious. And you have this beautiful culture of outdoor growers and custodians of the soil and doing it right and back to the land, just this culture is just evaporating. And so Flowcanna is partnering with these farmers, bringing like quality control and efficiencies of scale. And they just bought the Fetzer Vineyard. And we're going to partner with them and put a brand out into the market called All One Love, that all profits basically flow back to help small organic cannabis growers and just, elevate them in the market and help them get certified. And so that's, I think, really important is to like, just connect, raise the consciousness of cannabis consumers and make sure they're buying their medicine from a correct source. Kind of like what we were talking about with meat and animal products. It's like same thing with cannabis. It's just, it's really, it's about consciousness and be conscious about where it's coming from. So that's a big shift. We're shifting from legalization. I mean, obviously we're still putting resources there, but now we have to protect the culture that's under fucking huge threat right now that's really, supply cannabis all this time. And now there's this huge money and huge corporations moving in, and we just gotta it's like what we do in Bronner's with our coconut farmers and our palm farm, like partnering with the small family farmers who are, really using best regenerative organic practices and providing market access and recognition. And so that's a big project, a regenerative organic standard that we're launching with Patagonia and Demeter in the natural space. They're kind of those are our two big ones. And of course, MAPS, bringing psychedelics into the mainstream via FDA approval and making them legally available as medicine for people, our brothers and sisters suffering the most, but ultimately all of us. And then for the camp, just keep, for me, it's like a personal exercise and a lot of us in the creativity. And last year we did a whole thing on gender liberation and just in part honoring Ashana, who's the board member that I replaced. She was transgendered, found her truth or helped find her truth with MDMA. And she left $5 million to MAPS, which we matched with a gift. And now we've raised the $25 million that we needed to from other awesome rock stars. And on the psilocybin side, the firepower has been raised. So so the camp is just going to continue to be, bring together a lot of the psychedelic kind of movers and shakers, but also just be a really sweet space for us to blast foam on people and throw good parties and make amazing art and have good times. So this year is foam. We're going to do Foam Against the Machine. So yeah,
that's
so
great.
Yeah,
I love it for iRobot here.
What's that?
Because iRobot is the theme.
iRobot. So we're doing more. We're kind of doing more like how humanity sells out their humanity to the machine, and and like foam is like an avatar for psychedelics, but just kind of having fun with it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. David, I'm going to let you get to your car right now. Like I could fucking just sit here and talk to you all goddamn day long. Like we just started a Arash and David podcast and I just talk all day.
Yeah, right on,
I'll never get tired of this.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm certain we should do a sequel at some point.
Yeah, right on, man.
And thank you for all the work that you're doing with maps, with your camp. We get to enjoy it every year. It's a destination that pretty much everybody I know has.
Yeah.
That's a big thing on Playa, to have that one thing that most of the Playa agrees is a destination.
Right on, man.
It's a magical thing. And again, thank you so much for everything that you do. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, right on, Raj. Thank you for having me. And yeah.
You are now listening to San Francisco-based Mark Slee. This set was recorded at Robot Heart on opening Sunday night, Burning Man 2017. The gate may have just opened as Mark was playing, and Mark was telling me that he's like a big fan of that early in the week kind of vibe where all the anticipation is building and the city is still kind of building up around you. So he consciously and purposefully designed this set around exactly that feeling, which is pretty magical. It's a really, really beautiful set. So thank you, Mark, for sending that over to us. And special thanks to Pez, who was on episode number 31 of this show, for making the connection between us and Mark. You can hear this whole set over at soundcloud.com/robot-heart. That's Robot Heart's SoundCloud feed. And you can hear more from Mark himself over at soundcloud.com/MCSLEE. That's MCSLEE. Please give us a like on Facebook and join the Facebook group. And leave us a review on iTunes. All the links are over at burnerpodcast.com. You can connect with me on all of the social medias at Mr. Arash. That's MRARASH. Burner Podcast is produced by Rebel Dharma. Associate producer is Tori Massey. New shows are released on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. Ideally, but sometimes it's Thursday. Sorry, technical shit happens. It is available on all the podcasting platforms. I've lost track of how many new places this show just keeps popping up. Our opening theme music, America's Horse with No Name Remix, is produced by Joman. Check out his stuff at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. We love you, dear listeners, and until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Take us out, Mark Slee.
You can run the field tight blue. I never wondered the world. Look at me, I'm up. Looking for the white. I feel like you can run the field tight blue.
burnerpodcast.com.